Hey gang, I'm Luke and welcome to Down from the Attic. It's Halloween and it's time to look at a spooky game, and a game that's been long requested. It's the game of shrieking skulls and mortifying monsters. This is Horror House from Action GT. Let's get this thing down and have a look at it. First off, box art. And this thing is full of curious and creepy details. It's a drawing of the Death Head from the game, sure, but take a closer look here. Yeah, those are priests as the play pieces, and a crucifix rammed into the Death Head. This game has a really, really dark story to it. Horror House originally came out in Japan by Bandai and had quite a different box art to it, and this version is much harder to get hold of. However, this version did come with the priests and the crucifix. You know, a kid's game. A kid's game where kids exorcise demons. Fun for all the family. I can't imagine why parents would want to get rid of that. Naturally, this got changed. It might have worked in the Japanese market, but in the European and American markets, not so much. But the holdover for this is the artwork on the box and a couple of little illustrations in the instructions as well. This version from Action GT is different and the play pieces are different, which leads us nicely on to contents. And whew, there's a lot here too. There's the game board, the Death Head roulette, 39 monster cards, 6 demon cards, the Guardian Spirit card, 4 pass cards, 11 demon tokens, a sword, yep, no crucifix here, 4 knights, yep, let's keep religion right out of this, and the manual. Interestingly, the board has a scale print of all the cards and tokens on the back of it. So if you lose any of the pieces, it's simple enough to scan in and make replacements. I can't think of any other board game that's done this, and although my copy is complete, I'm so thankful for them doing this. And the board folds threefold in and around the components in the box, very unusual. The art on the board, however, is phenomenal. Hand-drawn, hand-coloured, it has a spectacular sense of depth to it. It's chock full of details. The King Demon centre stage here, creepy castles, terrifying towers, monsters everywhere. Frankenstein, Dracula, mummies, zombies, phantoms, ghosts, spectres. This is really impactful. The cards themselves have interesting monsters too, some recognisable ones and some new to me, each with their own descriptions, which builds the lore and the atmosphere when playing. There's some really funny ones here too, like the Umbrella Monster, Man-Eating Tomato, and the One-Eyed Monster. Oh dear. Kids, don't ask your dad about this, you will not like the answer. The cards are full colour and the art is really superb on these. Reading on the game, a lot of the ghosts and monsters come out of Japanese mythology, and I mean, it makes sense with this game coming from Japan, I suppose. If these knight play pieces look familiar to you, they're the same mould as used for the Doom Lords of Gulch in Weapons and Warriors. I find it fascinating seeing parts used across different games like this. Of course, we've got to talk about the Death Head. It's the centrepiece to this game, and it is so gnarly and awesome. And another holdover from the whole exorcism thing, this has little crucifixes moulded all over it. The spinner at the bottom is wrapped around with this snake, and the eyes, well, you'll have noticed they have speaker grills in them, because this head makes sounds. And this is from the early 80s, there's no program chips in here. This is a miniature record player in here. Yeah, putting the sword in the mouth randomises the track, the needle reads, and it plays the sound. It's ingenious, really. Setup. The Death Head goes here, right on the Demon King, with the 11 demon tokens landing on these spaces around the steps. Place the sword nearby along with the passes. This should be 1 less than the total number of people playing, so 4 players, 3 passes. Shuffle the monster deck and the demon deck and place at the side of the board too. Place the knights on the start space, decide who's going first, and the first player gets the Guardian Spirit card, and with that, we're ready to play. Playing the game. Players spin the roulette wheel to determine how far they move. Yep, no dice here. The board has a number of instructions and text on it, and it has to be obeyed if you land on those squares. The board is broken up into a number of rooms. Each room contains a monster that you have to battle. But first, you'll need to get into that room. There's 3 ways to do this. Use the Guardian Spirit card, which it sort of acts like a skeleton key. You can use this on any coloured lock. Once used, you pass it on to the next player. You can also use keys that you've picked up from previously slain monsters. Each monster card has a coloured key on it, and it has to match the colour of the skull on the door entrance. Or you can say the magic word. No, it's not please. Kazam or Kapow. These are printed on the spinner and you spin it, chanting your magic word. Okay, I'm gonna pick Kapow. 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 This is sort of like 50-50 chance. Once in the room, you're battling a monster. Take the top card from the monster deck to see your foe. Now, this is where the death head comes into play. Take the sword and slot it into one of the 3 slots in its mouth. If you hear a scream, you have slain the beast, and you get to keep the card and the key printed on it. Fantastic! However, if you hear a laugh, the monster has bested you. You need to follow the instructions to that room. This can be being told to return to the entrance, being thrown into a dungeon, the weeping room, being told to move further back along the path. This changes from room to room. If you hear clashing swords, then it's a draw. Return that monster card to the deck and draw another to battle against. Moving around the board, battling monsters and how you fare can send you going down different routes, and some of these are real stinkers, and pretty annoying to be perfectly honest. The Weeping Room has you stuck unless you can spin a certain number, and if you can't, you're going nowhere. Well, I ain't getting out of there. Certain play spaces will have other players join you, and if you're way ahead, this can be incredibly annoying. This game likes to torture its players. Navigating the left of the board, you'll reach the Stair of Death, up the Death Head, and this is where the real dangerous monsters live. Every token could mean battling a legendary monster, and there's 11 over 19 steps. It's more than likely that you're going to end up battling one of these things. The chips have either a sword or a skull on them. Swords, well, you're safe. Again. Skulls, however, oh dear. If you draw the King of Demon card, it's an instant lose, and yet you're going all the way back to the Room of Blood. You don't even get a chance to put the sword in the Death Head. And if you're almost off the Death Head, this is such a kick in the bollocks. And beating one of the monsters doesn't mean that you leave the steps of death. Oh, no. You have to make your way off, and this means landing on another chip. Leaving the steps, you're granted a magic pass. The route then leads to the Tower of Snakes, and one of the most frustrating and BS parts of the game. This spiral of dread has screwed me out of a win so many times because of these follow arrow signs. You can end up going round and round and round and round. Not fun. Not fun at all. But wait, it gets better. This square here swaps the position of you and the player sat next to you. So you could be way past the Tower of Snakes and have to go back. Oh, for crying out loud. The werewolf's den is after the Tower of Snakes, and if you lose here, you're off to the Screaming Room. And if you've not amassed a collection of monster cards and keys, God help you, because each step forward is a locked door, and it's kapow or kazam, and 50-50 chance that you'll get through. Yay! Kazam! Kazam! Yay! Kazam! Kazam! We're on to the last section of the game, the maze. If you have a magic pass card, you can follow the path into the maze, but if not, you're waiting here until someone uses theirs. Entering the maze, you use your magic pass and then gain entry. Each row of the maze is protected by a guardian, and at the end of your turn, the spinner is spun to see how far the guardian advances on you, and this can end up with routes being blocked off to you. There's penalties as well for being caught by them, such as losing monster cards, and if you have none left to give, you go back to the start of the maze. Navigate successfully through though, and you're free. You beat the horror house! So, final thoughts? Horror House is a classic game, but being a classic game, it has some of the questionable and old mechanics associated with older games. Being forced to move across the board on a bad spin of the roulette wheel feels monstrously unfair at times, particularly if that comes from another player. It's funny when you're watching it happen to the other players, but not so much yourself. Getting stuck in certain areas isn't much fun either. That being said, this game has a massive amount of variety to it, and as you progress through Horror House, it's quite clever how it reuses pieces from previous sections to introduce new mechanics and challenges throughout the game, like reusing the tokens on the Death Head for the Guardians in the maze is genius, you know, and obviously the Death Head being a talking skull, you know, it screams and makes all these noises, and a vintage one at that, and so heavily horror themed, is a major draw to this game. However, the spinner and the Kazam and Kapow mechanic is the same as flipping a coin, and the Death Head and its mechanic is much the same, 1 in 3 chance of slaying the monster. It's not the cleverest use of sound, but it's charming in its own way. The sounds picked, however, the sword clashing and the laughter are fantastic. They're really atmospheric and you know exactly what's going on with those. But the screams, they're far too human. And I've often confused the screams as the knight dying. I've put the sword in, it's gone, I was like, oh no, the knight's died. But no, that is the monster screaming. And I can only think that if they'd have used like a roar or a howl, something like, that would have been so much better. I like this game, I do like it. I mean, it's got a lot of irritating parts to it. Being moved around the board, it's really irritating, but I do still like it. It is, however, very, very collectible. With it being a horror-themed board game, and a talking one at that, and vintage, this game has become a bit of a crown jewel in many people's collections. However, it is not easy to find complete, working, and cheap. Copies for the Action GT version regularly go
for up to £250.
So yeah, this is a rare and expensive game to get hold of, and is probably one of the rarest games in my collection. But this copy, which had never been played with, had all the components there still, with a box that has no tape on any of the corners, the box is mint. I paid £20. Yeah, £20 for this on a eBay listing from a charity shop. It had one picture, and I thought, I'm gonna have to roll the dice on this, and I'm so glad that I did. I will admit that when it arrived, the death head wasn't working, and having experience of taking apart those miniature record players and fixing them, like with the Tommy Trains one, well, I figured I could fix this up, and it was fairly easy to fix as well. The belt had just slipped off the motor. I put that back on, put a battery in it, and it works just fine. However, even though the Action GT one is expensive, my god, the Bandai one.
The Bandai version can go for up to £400 to £600, and the only real difference I can see, other than the box art, is a red death head. The gameplay is exactly the same.
In conclusion, Horror House is a fun, if at times frustrating, spooky themed board game, and chanting magic spells and shrieks and screams from the skull and the massive monsters are a huge draw to this game. It does have its gameplay flaws though, I'm not going to overlook that, but if you can find a copy of this cheap and affordable, it is definitely worth getting and adding to your collection. It's such a novelty and a really unusual game for a vintage game. Well, I hope all of you have a fantastic Halloween. As always, I'm Luke, thanks again for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. If you like what I'm doing here on Down From The Attic, please consider liking the video and subscribing. Comments are always welcome, and I'll see you in the next video!